Watch repair is not easy. Welcome to Swap. My name is Harrison. If you're new to the channel, I tend to talk about stories behind watches and my personal experience with different watches as it relates to reviews. I've also shared some technical information about watches because I'm a technical kind of person. In my day job, I run the operations for a company as well as all the engineering. And so engineering is something that is exciting to me. I like seeing how things work. So about a year ago, I started getting into buying tools to repair watches. I'll warn you now, if you're like me, there is a never-ending list of tools that you could buy for watchmaking. Given the variance in number of different ways that people have solved these different problems inside a watch, there are a lot of different tools you would need to solve disassembling or fixing. A small detail is the shock springs in a watch. They vary. There's different versions, and some of those versions have specific tools to remove the spring. And that's just one of the components inside a watch. So it's very easy to start, making mistakes and then thinking, well, I don't have the right tools, so you buy more tools. Either way, point is, I bought a lot of tools. And I started working on watches, mainly Chinese large movements. They're for incredibly large three-handed watches. And they didn't have a dial, they didn't have a case, but it allowed me to disassemble and reassemble the movement repeatedly. And I'll tell you, disassembling and reassembling is relatively easy on a three-handed watch. Now, there are some caveats there, meaning that don't force anything. I have done that more than once, where you think it's set correctly, you start screwing it in, you meet resistance a little early, and you just keep screwing it down anyway, and then you hear a snap. Not fun. The other suggestion would be, I probably spent about a quarter to a third of my time in watchmaking on the ground looking for a part because they're tiny, and if you're working on carpet, they will end up off the table and on the ground, and you will not be able to find it. So please put something hard underneath you, like a sheet of plastic or something, to keep it out of the carpet fibers, because you will not be able to find it afterwards. So I started doing that, and I felt like I was gaining some experience. It was difficult at times, but it was rewarding when you put it back together and it started working. It felt really good. And I started cleaning and then oiling those movements as well. So then I thought, you know what? I'm ready for a movement. Now, the problem with having my brain is I think, okay, how much harder could a chronograph be? Now, I understand it's much harder. But in my head, I had had such an easy time disassembling and reassembling, I thought there couldn't be that much more challenge. And I'm a little further from the truth. Now, I will say, what I did is I bought a Chinese version of a Valjoux 7750. I took it apart, I put it back together. And yeah, I had moments that took a little longer, and I had things that were challenging or difficult or interesting, and I found tools that I needed, like a specific watch holder for that movement would be really helpful, and other things that I didn't know that I needed until I needed it. And so then I thought, all right, well, now that I've put it together and, taken it apart and put it together, I'm ready. So I took apart a vintage watch. It was part of my watch collection. This is it in its full form before I took it apart last year, and I cleaned it. And I didn't have very many issues. Taking it apart and cleaning it, very little issues. I put it back together. And the problem is that I do not know what I'm doing, obviously. And so it's not as simple as taking it apart, putting it back together, and oiling it. Now, the oiling part requires you to oil it properly, like the correct amount in each location, which is hard. But the other issue is sometimes things don't line up. For example, the chronograph works, like the balance moves, but as soon as I hit the start function, the oscillating pinion moves over, hits that wheel, and it stops. It slowly works down the movement to the point where it doesn't work anymore. And I don't know why. I mean, I can make some assumptions, and I've been trying to research it, but it's very difficult to find out what it is. So you take it apart, you put it back together, you take it apart, you put it back together, the same bridge over and over again, trying to get this part to work. And what you end up doing after you've taken it apart that many times and put it back together is that you end up losing a part at a certain point. And so then you buy it, and then you lose a different one, or some spring flies away across your corner. Or in my case, I accidentally broke one of the springs that's attached to one of the bridges. It's not a simple bridge on a 7750. It's got a bridge with welded on or somehow glued on springs, and the spring snapped. And so now I have to get a new bridge. And so it gets very expensive if you don't know what you're doing. So this is a PSA. If you're out there and you're looking into watchmaking, start really, really simple. I tried to show some videos here so you could see what I was doing, and I have amassed a lot of tools in order to get this to work. Now, I will get better, and I will get it to work eventually, but do not start with chronographs. Just be aware it is very difficult. And I know that goes without saying because they're small parts and you have to use tweezers and whatnot, but once you start doing it, you start to think it's deceivingly easy. But losing parts or breaking parts when you've been working on it for 3 hours is very frustrating. Just letting you guys know where I'm at in the watchmaking portion. Some people have asked me what's going on and what's going on with the chronograph, and so I thought I'd let you guys know that it's not. I will probably end up buying another bridge or trying to source something else, and it may take me another 6 months before I get it up and running. But eventually I'll get it up and running, and then I'll let you know. As a side note, I've also started repairing an Omega Seamaster as well, and that one's going a lot better. It's pretty much back together. I just need to get a new balance wheel because the balance staff is broken. So if you're interested in that video on the Omega Seamaster repair, hit subscribe. You'll be able to see that video when it comes out. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.